Right. Now, here's therefore, I would like to congratulate you on officially becoming the civic vice chair. It's a bit of a mouthful, so you have to make sure you do it right. You weren't unfortunately able to be present on the day we were elected. I have worked with you for quite some time. I think we both know the way each other works, and we seem to share a sort of a sense of humour at times. Other than that, you're putting on a very good face to it all. I think we should work together over the next few months, and I'm really looking forward to it. We have already been out on a number of events, and basically sharing the result between, and I seem to have gone very well. I'm very pleased to have you as my vice chair, and I look forward to discussing with you. Please.
We're done. Can you hear me? Good, great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm sorry that I missed the Mayor Council meeting, and I would like to say a few thank yous, if I may. Firstly, I would like to thank Councillor Lewis for recommending me for the civic role. It is very much appreciated. And I would also like to thank Councillor Patton for nominating myself, and also Councillor Alex Dale for seconding my nomination, and you, the Council, for approving my nomination. And I promise that I'll do my level best to represent this authority in the best way possible. I would also like to thank Councillor Kemp for formally presenting me the change of office here today, and I will support him as Vice Civic Chairman as and when required. I'm also grateful for the support from my wife, Lakbir, our children, Navjeet and Sakraj, along with their partners, Narinder and Jay. Without their support, I perhaps would not be here today. Lakbir and I are blessed with 5 grandchildren, and I'm pleased to say they're all here to support me today. I am both humbled and honoured to be the first member of the Sikh community in attaining the civic role at this authority since its inception in April 1889, when this council consists of 80 members, including 20 aldermen. The first few events I attended as the Vice Civic Chairman were events marking the 80th anniversary of the D-Day landings, and we are all aware of the sacrifices made by many young service personnel at that time. But what perhaps is not so well known is the number of my forefathers who also fought for our freedom. Some 109,000 Sikh soldiers were wounded in World War I and II, and a further 83,000 Sikh soldiers made the ultimate sacrifice for the freedom that we all enjoy. Most of the Sikh soldiers were also young and did not speak the English language, and they were 1,000 miles away from their homes and families in a foreign land, but they still fought courageously for both king and country. And I pay homage to all the Sikh soldiers who fought for our freedom and their sacrifice on our behalf. At the time of war, but I do know that when I came into this country, which is very much my home now, back in August 1961, at the age of 8, things were very different. I did not speak the English language, and there was certainly a lack of awareness of different cultures, which caused a lot of discrimination. But since then, a lot of work has been done to improve the knowledge of different cultures in the public arena, and we as a collective society have moved on. And it is good to see equality and diversity being celebrated, and more understanding and appreciation of different cultures that we all enjoy today. In fact, most of the Indian restaurants are only successful because of the numbers of Western people who perhaps enjoy tandoori chicken or a curry on a regular basis. Today actually marks the start of the South Asian Heritage Month, a month in which many people in our country celebrate and commemorate the rich culture of South Asia. As a person of Sikh faith, I am proud to follow the principles of service laid down in our Guru Granth Sahib, to work hard and honestly, serve with humility, and daily pray for the well-being of all mankind. Now, in my civic role, I am looking forward to meeting many dedicated volunteers who do wonderful work in this great county of ours. And if I can assist them in any way to perhaps promote their work, then I will do that. Finally, Mr. Chairman, I would like to reaffirm my commitment and say that I am deeply honoured to be given my civic role, and I look forward to fulfilling my duties as an ambassador for this authority and Derbyshire to the best of my ability. Thank you.
Our next business is the minutes, item 4, and I move the minutes pages 1 to 30 of the meeting held on the 22nd of May 2024. Councillor Ball, please.
Thank you, Chair. In the minutes it states that Councillor Hickton proposed Councillor Kemp for the Civic Chair. It was actually me.
Thank you, Councillor Ball. Councillor Lewis.
I was going to move the minutes with reference to that correction, of course. Thank you.
Thank you.
Second, rather, not move.
Thank you. Other than that amendment that I'm sure will be put right, are there any other observations or questions on the minutes? No? Okay. Can we move to the vote then, please? Okay, is there any person that hasn't voted that wishes to? Okay, in that case, the minutes are approved as a correct record. Thank you. The next item is item 5, report of the leader of the council and members' questions on that report. Councillor Lewis, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Just one item, really, I think we're all familiar with, and that will be the general election result, which was on the 4th of July, and the subsequent results of that, which meant that we now have returned in Derbyshire a full slate of Labour MPs. So I wanted to pass on my congratulations to the Labour MPs who've been elected to stand for the residents of Derbyshire. And also to put on record my thanks and commiserations to all of the outgoing Conservative MPs in Derbyshire. They've got a big job ahead of them in Parliament. I have met a couple of them now, Louise Jones a few days ago, and the new MP for Mid Derbyshire, whose name escapes me, but I met him just yesterday in London. I'm pretty sure we'll be able to work together as a local authority with our MPs, and indeed we will do our best to foster a good working relationship with them. We're going to need their help on a number of fronts, and I think that is around all the things that we're familiar with: adult social care, children's services, and discussing some of those key concerns, particularly around children's services and the cost of care home placements. as well. So there are lots of big topics, but highways is another big area as well, where we're going to need a lot of support, Chairman, I think, as a local authority, that we require that critical investment. So any open channels that exist between ourselves and the MPs will need to be made the most of. We will invite them to County Hall. I will be writing to them over the course of the next few days. When we get them here to County Hall, we will sketch out the full range of services that we do as a local authority, but also where we have particular pressures and where we can mutually help each other as well. So I think that is the other key aspect around that conversation that we need to have. But we do have a big agenda. They're very familiar to all members in this chamber. So thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis. Are there any questions of the leader? No. Okay, thank you. We'll then move on to public questions. And the first question is from Sue.
Is it on? Given that the Asian Association of Chesterfield and North Derbyshire has been receiving discretionary grants from Derbyshire County Council for many years, and considering the potential removal of these funds following the consultation process, could the Council please clarify the specific criteria used to determine the continuation or the removal of these grants? Additionally, what measures will the Council put in place to support the affected communities if these funds are withdrawn?
Councillor Hart, please.
Thank you very much for your question. As you acknowledge in your question, Derbyshire County Council have been providing your organisation that you're representing today and many others grants for many years. In fact, I think we're talking in your case something like 20 years or more, so long going back. So we did start a review on all of our grants before COVID, just to make sure that helping deliver to our residents' priorities. When COVID happened, of course, we had to put that on one side, but we picked it up again last year. But we have done, since we picked it up, we have made sure that organisations that we give grants to do know that it isn't guaranteed funding every year, you know, and there may be changes. But I don't know whether you read the Cabinet report that was produced asking to go out to consultation, but it was highlighted, of course, that the Council is under significant financial pressures due to the demand for services and the cost of providing these services for local people. As you know, the consultation is happening now. We do have a draft impact and equality assessment, and that has helped us to sort of anticipate some of the proposals that might come forward to them from the affected organisations should that funding be stopped. And in fact, it did help us to sort of sort the questions out on the consultation to draw that out. When the consultation finishes, we'll then consider all the responses. We'll be holding some extra meetings and ongoing engagement, as well as the analysis of the annual reports and the accounts for any possible affected organisations. Following that, we'll then consider all the feedback, and then, of course, we'll assess the viability and implications before making any decisions. So I hope that sort of covers some of your concerns.
Do you wish to ask a supplementary question?
Yes. When will we know the decision, the final decision on the consultation?
It'll take some time once the consultation comes in and all the responses are received. So I haven't got a time frame exactly for that, but I can assure you we'll take all the responses in. We will talk to the organisations that put their cases forward. I'm sure that many besides yourself and your organisation will be asking us to relook and rethink. So we will be talking with them and assessing, as I say, the viability and the sustainability and everything else. But we will do it as soon as we can. But of course, the funding, whatever, is guaranteed until next April anyway. So I hope that helps. Okay.
Thank you. The next question is in the hands of Mr. David Ingham, please.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of full council. The question I have and was submitted prior to the two senior management restructure reports on today's agenda is as follows. I note the agenda item relating to Children's Services leadership changes, which is to agree to the regrading of the role of Director of Strategic Commissioning, Quality and Performance from grade 17 to 18, following an evaluation of the role, and that the job title of the vacant Director of Schools and Learning is changed to Director of Education, the job content remaining the same, which is now currently advertised. I also note the agenda item relating to seeking approval to amend the senior leadership structure with adult social care. Can it be clearly explained what is the rationale for these adult social care changes, as there was no reference to a leadership restructuring within the 24-25 budget documentation, and what impact any of these proposed management changes would have on day services and residential services, given that these areas of service provision are still subject to an ongoing public consultation?
Thank you. I believe that you're aware that there's going to be a written answer to this, and once you've received that answer, you are then in a position to ask a supplementary. Thank you for your attendance today. Oh, okay, sorry, I thought you were.
No, that's fine.
No.
Unfortunately, I can't ask a supplementary, but
Okay,
I know the agree.
thank you. Item 7, there are no petitions that have been received. Item 8, changes to the committee memberships and outside body appointments. I invite the Legal and Democratic Services Director to introduce the report, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. This is a straightforward report to make some minor amendments to committee membership and outside bodies now that Councillor Gourlay is no longer a member of the Conservative group. The report also seeks to appoint named substitutes to the East Midlands Combined County Authorities, 2 regulatory committees, and members of council will recall that the main appointments to these committees was made at the council's annual general meeting in May. The recommendations are on page 6 of the agenda pack, and I'm very happy to take any technical questions. Thank you.
Are there any technical questions at this time? Could I have a proposal, please? Councillor Swan.
Thank you, Chair. I move the recommendations in the report.
A seconder, please. Councillor Flatley.
Yeah, happy to second, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any observations or questions on the report? No? I will then move to the vote. Thank you. Is there anybody else that needs to vote, that wants to vote? Okay, thank you. The recommendations are approved. We'll move on to item 9, changes to the senior leadership structure within the adult care, social care and health. And I invite the Executive Director for Adult Social Care and Health to introduce the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So the purpose of this report is to seek approval from full council to approve the remuneration of the Director of Strategic Commissioning, Integration and Partnerships and the Director of Quality Assurance, Performance and Safeguarding within Adult Social Care and Health. The reason for this is that both posts have been evaluated at grade 18, and therefore the salary for these roles exceeds the £100,000 salary threshold, which requires approval from full council. The Managing Director has already considered a report setting out the proposed changes to the structure and has agreed to support the amendments subject to Council approving the salary package for the roles. Whilst Council isn't being asked to approve the structural changes today, it may be helpful if I briefly outline the reasons for the change. The current substantive senior leadership structure in adult social care which consists of 2 directors and 3 assistant directors, was developed to build in dedicated director-level capacity to drive the delivery of the Better Lives and Best Life Derbyshire Transformation Programme. Now that much of that transformational activity is completed, the service area needs to readjust its senior leadership team accountabilities to make sure that we have the right strategic leadership resources to address current priorities and to shape the future. The operating context for adult social care has changed significantly over the course of the last 2 or 3 years, and we continue to face substantial and increasing demand alongside significant budget pressures and challenges in service and people capacity. Additionally, the adult social care service area is now subject to formalised regulatory inspection arrangements delivered by the Care Quality Commission. We need to ensure that at the same time as delivering to our business as usual operations, driving that we also maintain a strong strategic leadership focus on quality assurance, performance and safeguarding vulnerable adults across the whole market. To do that, we need to be able to be sure that we have the appropriate strategic leadership capacity in place to deliver on 3 core business areas. They are strategic commissioning, partnerships and integration, operational delivery and strategic leadership across the whole service area. The report is set out in section 8. In addition to the approval of the salary, Council is also being asked to agree amendments to the pay policy to reflect the changes to the leadership roles and to authorise the monitoring officer to make necessary amendments to the Constitution. I'm happy to answer any technical questions.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Are there any such questions of a technical nature? No. Oh, sorry. Councillor George, please.
Thank you. Is the microphone working?
Yes.
Yes, lovely. Thank you. Thank you, Simon. And I wanted to ask, obviously, at a time of significant transformation within the department and with major consultations running on the future of our directly delivered services, then why now? View of directorships and how the what many of our staff and service users will see as very high salaries for these roles can be justified within the context of the cuts to direct services such as day centres and the cuts to the voluntary sector, which have just been mentioned in a question, which are currently being proposed by this council.
Know the rules of this. It's supposed to be a question on a technical nature. There was going, you're roving into political questions there. You could try and keep it just to the technical bits. Thank you. Yes, please.
Okay, thank you for your question, Councillor George. Absolutely recognise that in the current financially pressured environment that we're operating in, any and every spend needs to be carefully considered and avoided if possible. I'm also really conscious that the Adult Social Care and Health Department is the largest single department in the council. We employ more than 3,000 colleagues and are responsible for a total budget of just over £300 million, which is almost half of the council's total spend. As I said in my introduction to the report, the department continues to face significant challenges born out of increasing demand and cost of services, which means, from my perspective, that it's critically important that we do have the right level of senior leadership capacity to be able to respond to the core priorities that I laid out. I can assure all elected members that I have considered very carefully the proposals outlined, and I am confident that they are what we need to be able to give assurance to the council that we can continue to deliver our council and service plan objectives whilst driving that necessary change that you referenced, Councillor George, and improvement and delivering to statutory and regulatory duties too. Thank you.
Councillor Spencer, please.
Thank you, Chairman. with the unfortunate absence of Councillor Hoy today, I'm going to move the recommendations on page 38, the 3 recommendations that are recorded in the pack. And also, Chairman, I just give some assurance of the methodology which is outside my remit and outside any member's remit of the Hay scale analysis that takes place on pay. We do not, and we are not the professionals in making that analysis of the pay scale adjustments, but it is absolutely essential as a well-run organisation that we maintain the differentials within the single status programme, and the Hay scale analysis is the thing that sets the figure. And I just wanted to confirm that, and I'm happy to move the recommendations in the report, Chair.
Second, Councillor Lewis, please.
Happy to second, Chair, and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or observations on the report, please? No? Okay, then we'll move to the vote. Thank you. Is there anyone else that needs to vote that can't vote for one reason or another? Okay, and thank you. The recommendations are approved. We'll move on to the next item, item 10, Children's Services and Leadership Changes. I'll invite the Executive Director for Children's Services to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. So just to outline the proposals that are in your report, the purpose of the report is to seek approval for adjustment of the salary package for the Director post, Strategic Commissioning, Quality and Performance. Changes to the role have resulted in it being evaluated via the Council's external job evaluation provider, Corn Ferry Hay. The outcome of this evaluation and recommendation is that this role be uplifted from a grade 17 to a grade 18 in accordance with the evaluation review. The financial implications of this decision are a maximum full year effect of 18,000, including all on costs, NI contributions and pension contributions. The salary for this role then exceeds 100,000 threshold, which requires approval from full council. The Managing Director has considered the full report setting out the proposed changes to the structure and has agreed to support the amendments subject to council approving this recommendation. To note, we have asked Corn Ferry Hay to evaluate the Director of Early Help and Safeguarding to ensure the current grade, 18, remains the correct grade. Additionally, to note, we've changed the title of the Director of Schools and Learning to Director of Education so that it more accurately reflects the responsibilities of this role. The recommendations are set out in section 8 of the report. In addition to the approval of the salary, Council is also being asked to agree amendments to the pay policy statement to reflect the changes to the Children's Services Leadership Team as outlined in the report, and authorise the monitoring officer to make necessary amendments to the Constitution. I'm happy to answer any technical questions.
Thank you. Are there any such questions of a technical nature? Okay, no. I'll then ask for a proposal, please. Thank you, Councillor Patton. Seconder?
Second, Chair, and reserve the right to speak. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Dale. Are there any observations or questions on the report, please? Okay, no. Well, then we'll move to the vote then. Thank you. Else that requires to vote and can't? No? Okay, well, thank you. The recommendations are approved. Our next business is item 11, minor change to the Constitution D2 Strategic Leadership Board. And I invite the Director of Legal and Democratic Services to introduce the report, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. This is a procedural report that Council will be familiar with to notify Council that I've made an amendment to the Constitution and a delegation. Thank you. Can colleagues hear me now? I'll pull it close to me. So I'll start again. This is a procedural report to notify Council that I have made an amendment following the decision of Cabinet on the 22nd of February, reference to the new Derby and Derbyshire Strategic Leadership Board and its terms of reference have been included within the Council's constitution, and reference to the Vision Derbyshire Committee and the Economic Prosperity Committee have been removed. As members will be aware, I have the authority to make such amendments, but must report them to Governance, Ethics and Standards Committee and Council to note. And these amendments were reported to Governance, Ethics and Standards Committee on the 11th of July, and I'm asking Council to note the amendments today. The recommendations are in section 8 of the report, and as usual, I'm happy to take any technical questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any such questions of a technical nature? No. Okay, then Councillor Swan, please.
Thank you, Chair. I move the recommendations in the report.
Have a proposal, please. Councillor Flatley.
Thank you, Chair. Happy to second.
Thank you. Are there any observations or questions on the report? No? Okay, then we'll move to the vote, please. Looks like a similar number to last time, so I'm presuming we'll all voted that wish to, and the recommendations are approved. Thank you. Our next business is item 12, performance monitoring and revenue outturn 2023 to 24. And I invite the Managing Director to introduce the report, please.
Performance aspect, good progress has been made delivering the council plan. 82% of the 45 deliverables in the plan showing good or strong progress. 16% rated as requiring review and 2% as requiring action. Within the report, Appendix B, our position in full after the end of the financial year. How's that one? Okay, I will start again. So this report sets out the performance against the council plan for 23-24 and the council's final revenue outturn position for the same year. From a performance perspective, good progress has been made in delivering the council plan, with 82% of the 45 deliverables in the plan showing good or strong progress. 16% were rated as requiring review and 2% rated as requiring action. Appendix 3 in the report sets out the position in full up to the end of the financial year for each deliverable, and associated key measures are set out in the council plan. From a financial perspective, the outturn for the financial year 23-24 is an overspend of 21.655 million. This is an improvement of just over 12 million on the forecast that was reported at Q3, which was at just over £34 million forecast overspend. So this decrease in the forecast overspend since Q3 is shown in Table 2 on page 19 of the report. There have been some favourable movements to give that net overall improved position, and they've been seen due to a combination of additional income, reductions to expenditure and use of reserves. Cost control measures, including a vacancy freeze, were implemented from September 2023, which led to those cost reductions, which I've just set out. However, there were still significant demand and cost pressures, which remained high, particularly in adult and children's social care. The details of the movement between the Q3 position and the year-end outturn are set out in paragraph 2.14 of the report, and Table 3 captures all of those movements and the details in pages 19 and 20 of the report. The recommendations are contained in section 7, and I'm happy, Chair, to answer any questions.
Are there any questions of a technical nature? No? Okay then. Can I have a Councillor Spencer, please.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a rerun of the report that was taken to Cabinet last week, as is required. And I think it is worth noting the work that has been carried out to get us to this position. Although not the perfect place to be, a far better place than we found ourselves in 10 months ago, I have to say. And the work and effort that has gone in from every single one of our departments across the County Council cannot be underestimated. This was a huge ask on a very short notice period to address what could have been far more difficult than what we find ourselves today. And so, in many respects, this report is a success story of the work that has been carried out during that period, although there is more to do. And when you look back at, I think it was £46.8 million challenge 10 months ago, and you see what you see before you today, the report itemises across the organisation the measures that were put in place. So I want to place on record, Chairman, my personal thanks to everybody within the organisation who's been involved in meeting the challenges that we laid out for them 10 months ago, because it is a huge achievement. But I think it is also worth noting, Chairman, the ongoing challenges the authority faces in two particular areas within the Council. And these are predominantly driven by demand. And the demand in adult social care has changed dramatically over the last few weeks and months, with the way in which people are choosing to look for either care packages or placements, whatever the case may be, and the financial pressures and the demand has increased. The demand in children's services, particularly children's placements, is significant. It is an issue, if you look through this document all the way through, that seems to be laying further and further demands on our organisation. And we have statutory duties and responsibilities to address those issues, as we will always do with our legal obligations. But that demand must be recognised. And we as an organisation will find it very difficult to tackle that issue. And I hope, as I hoped before with the previous government, there is a recognition nationally that this is an issue that needs to be addressed. I can only see, from my personal perspective, that the way to do that is to cap those costs and make sure that those children deliver, or young people, should I say, those young people deliver the care and assistance they need, but is at a reasonable, measured price. We have some fantastic care providers in the county. I am not going to tarnish them all with the same brush, but there are also elements within that particular sector of exploitation of the situation the authority finds itself in. And like I say, Chairman, we are not unique in Derbyshire. So I would ask every member in this chamber to come together with me and the council to lobby whomever chooses to listen to us about this very issue and how we need to address it. Because we will do what we can with controlling or trying to manage the demand facility. But we are going to require government intervention in dealing with setting those figures in the first place. So, Chairman, with that in mind, I'm happy to move the recommendations which are on page 38 of this report, and I'll wind it up later on if anybody else has got anything to say. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Lewis, please.
I was going to second the recommendation to reserve the right to speak.
Councillor Dixon, please.
Thank you, Chair. And I'd like to join Simon in putting down my thanks on record for all that the staff have achieved over the last 9 months since the bombshell dropped last September. In particular, I'd like to thank Messrs Kenyon and Catlow and their staff for the support they've given us in helping understand the financial position, and also all of our staff, because I know there has been some very dark days for some of them, facing uncertainty, extra pressures, and in some cases, the loss of their jobs. And I'd also like to thank Simon, because I know this is weighed very heavily upon you, and the efforts that you have personally made and the leadership that you have shown. And today's report is very sobering, considering that for years DCC was regarded as one of the most stable councils financially. And whether it's 46 million or 21 million, it's still an overspend, and it still impacts on the services that we offer to the people of Derbyshire. And the county has lived beyond its means. I have to be political. It's a political arena. This sorry situation is a culmination of 14 years of Conservative rule, where local government and the services that are closest to people have not been protected as they should. Instead, they've been subject to some harsh and callous cuts. Whether it's our highways, children's services or adult care, the Conservative Party nationally has broken local government, and I am grateful that they are no longer in power. And just as back in 1997, when it was Labour picking up the pieces nationally, it is now Labour's challenge to slowly put local government back together again. And it's my real worry that next May, it will be this group here who will be picking up the pieces in Derbyshire after 18 years of financial mismanagement and irresponsibility. And that in May next year, we'll be inheriting a council that is barely a shadow of its former self, its services decimated, its assets stripped, demoralised staff, reduced services, disappeared services. We wanted to have a tagline which has all but disappeared, and it used to be improving life for local people. Can we really hold our heads up and say that what the county is doing? Derbyshire was once a proud council, but somewhere along the way, I feel we've lost our moral compass. And when we look financially, what went wrong? We have, and I've said this before in this chamber, we have lost opportunities to bring more funding into via council tax.
And if we had always raised it to the maximum we could, it would have brought in about £43 million, which was roughly the size of the hole we were left in the budget last September. And we have failed to lobby to get local services properly funded. Since 2010, 300 million, in effect, has been taken out of the county's budget. In those days, we had a budget at about 1 billion. And if you factor in inflation, that budget today will be near enough 1.48 billion. And our budget today is somewhere around the £700 million mark. So it's less than half of what it was. And I have seen no evidence of successful lobbying to get local services properly funded. Councillor Lewis kept saying, watch this space, but we never did see Michael Gove charging over the horizon with bags of cash. And now we never will. And indeed, we didn't even successfully lobby our own MPs, because Lee Rowley was a minister in the very department that funded local government. I am pleased to hear that the Labour government under Sir Keir Starmer is already talking about multi-year settlements for local government, and that will give us the financial certainty that the county needs to plan its activities. That is good news. But I also know that in Natalie, Louise, Toby, John with an H, Jonathan, John without an H, Adam, Lindsay and Samantha, we have 9 Labour MPs fighting for the counties and being our advocates down in Westminster. I went out with every one of them on the doorstep during the general election and burnt their ear as much as I could about Derbyshire. And post-election, my very first priority was giving them a briefing on how the cuts that we are currently making is affecting their constituencies. Other things that I have learned through bitter experience in the county, we have failed to make savings year on year. This has been in the past, and I see that this year we were meant, if you look on the report, 2.65, we were meant to make £28 million of in-year savings, and so far we have only made 5.7. And I'm worried that we have relied on burning through the reserves, first the general reserve and now the earmark reserves. As I always say, the thing about reserves, the thing is they can only ever be used once. We did at one point have the general reserve down to virtually the SIP per million of about 25 million. And now in earmark reserves, in April 2023, we had 272 million in earmark reserves. That has now gone down to 193.3 million. And, you know, we're facing this financial situation, even though we've had some really generous settlements and COVID money, which have helped to prop up the budget. And we've got some very serious decisions around the Sinfin issue, where we have capitalised £57 million of the bill for the court settlement. And I believe that issue is still ongoing. So, you know, in conclusion, we failed to lobby to get local services properly funded. We've lost opportunities to bring in more council tax. We've failed to make savings in year. We've relied on using the reserves. We've relied on windfalls and generous settlements. And though there are extrinsic factors, whether it was war in Ukraine, whether it was inflationary pressures and the cost of living crisis, whether it was the unexpected high staff pay rise or the increasing demands on adult social care and children's services, we are still facing a real crisis. But I think the thing that we have to reflect is, though we might say it's not as bad as it was, but look at what's on the horizon for the people of Derbyshire in the next year. Closure of much-loved residential care homes, daycare centres are closing. We've nearly doubled the price of school meals. We're withdrawing support, as we've seen today, to voluntary sector groups.
we look like we might be withdrawing support for the CVSs. We're shutting Buxton Museum. Libraries are facing reduced hours. We're closing children's centres. We're cutting respite care. And we're making massive cuts in children's services. So I refer to what I said at the beginning. We will next May inherit a council that's barely a shadow of its former self. And its services decimated and emptied out, assets stripped. As I said before, Derbyshire, which was once a proud council, has somewhere along the way lost its moral compass.
Councillor Dale, please.
Thank you, Chair. I was actually hoping to stand up and say something really positive about our schools in the performance section of the report, but I can't resist in respond to a couple of the points that Councillor Dixon made in her very long, very dull and very doom-mongering speech she gave. I think on the issue of council tax in particular, I'm surprised you have the audacity to try and lecture us on that, because whatever we did on council tax, Labour objected and voted against it. If we increased it, they said it was too high. If we didn't increase it enough, they said it wasn't high enough. So the idea that they have any sort of sense of policy or strategy around council tax is absolutely for the birds. And we talk about inheritances. You know, let's just go back to 2010 and what the state of the country was in that we inherited, and go back to 2013 when we inherited the council from Labour. It was an absolute dire strait. So as much as day follows night, we can count on Labour to trash what they inherit, and I'm sure that will be the case with the new Labour government. Just moving on then to a positive point, I did want to highlight in particular some of the performance around our schools and really pay tribute to all of our head teachers, governors and school staff for some really cracking performance. I don't know if you've got it, but page 80 of the report deals with the rate at which the percentage of children and young people attending good or better schools improves. And in our secondaries, we've had a jump of 13.6% over the course of the past year, which is incredible performance. We're still behind national, we're still behind where we need to be, but I think that is really outstanding performance, and we really must pay tribute to our schools for that work, as well as schools who have also improved at a faster rate than the national averages. As I say, there's a way to go there, but we are doing very, very well, and I just really want to put on record my thanks to all those who are working so hard on that. And then also, if you move to page 96, there's some really interesting figures there around the catch-up following COVID, and some really good figures in terms of outperforming national benchmarks on children achieving the required standard. Grades 4 to 9 in English and Maths at GCSE were ahead of national there, which is really, really encouraging. And also the gap between disadvantaged and non-disadvantaged pupils, there's some really encouraging results in there. So I just wanted to highlight those, because otherwise they would get buried in all of the fairly depressing speeches we've had so far. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kinsella, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've got a specific question I'd like to ask on the performance report. And it's a question for Councillor Lewis as the lead on climate change. And I just want him to square a circle for me if he can. The Climate Change Strategy Annual Report, December 2023, and I quote, there will be a potential shortfall in the necessary emissions reduction of 7,250 tonnes of CO2 by 31-32. And the document goes on to say, to achieve net zero, we will require a step change, again a quote, in emissions reduction performance, which seems fairly conclusive to me. And yet, if we look at the Council's plan, 22 to 25, page 11, it cites key areas of success. And one of those key areas of success, in fact, there's two areas relating to reduction of greenhouse emissions. And it states that those emissions are on target, and that it's rated as good, and good progress is being made. I just wonder which of those two Derbyshire County Council's documents are correct.
Quite conveniently, Councillor Lewis, please.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman. I have to agree with Councillor Dale's assessment of Councillor Dixon's speech as being the most mind-numbingly dull speech that I think we've ever heard in this chamber, painting a picture of bleakness that just simply isn't true. And I would refute a lot of what was said in there, but just to pick up a couple of key points. Local Conservatives right across the country have been working hard to balance books across local authorities everywhere. And it's been a really difficult challenge. We know all of the the things, as Councillor Dale said, we inherited in 2010, a legacy of a more or less a bankrupt nation. And it took 14 years of Conservative governments. And yes, there have been many issues and problems which are not being reflected at a local level. But it still took a Conservative government to get our nation's finances back on a decent footing. And indeed, recent inflation figures at 2%, the Labour have inherited from us actually a legacy of stability from which to build. And I hope, and I rightly hope, that they will make the most of that opportunity. I will give the Labour government that's there at the moment the benefit of the doubt when it comes to what it might do for local government, local authorities and public services. It has not yet clearly set out its stall. It has not yet told us what additional resources may come down the line, what additional support there will be to help local authorities through all of the various pressures that have been described by Councillor Spencer earlier on. And indeed, there may be more pressures yet to come. And I would really like to understand Labour's thinking, particularly on things like minimum and living wages, and what its policy area will be around this, because it was a little bit vague in the run-up to the election in its manifesto, other than to say it will increase it and it will tackle issues like 0 hours contracts and what that might look like in the future. But if that is not clearly set out, that is going to put an additional pressure on local authorities of an order that we have not seen before, because raising it by such a significant margin will affect the differentials right across local authorities and cause a real issue, both for local authorities, but also our providers of things like home care and so on. This is going to be really, really challenging. As I say, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt at this moment in time, but it is going to be a real challenge. And I'd like to join in Councillor Spencer and Councillor Dale and Councillor Dixon in paying tribute and thanks to the officers of the local authority in the work that they did to get us over this particular issue. That in-year saving has been quite a remarkable thing, and it just shows the flex and agility of an organisation like this. You only get that kind of flex and agility if there is good leadership in place within this organisation. So I take my hat off the entire officer cohort. Been quite extraordinary. And I'd like to share Councillor Dixon's worry that Labour might take control of the County Council next year. She expressed that even better than I could express it, as it would be a real worry if Labour did take control of the local authority next year. We will do our best over this side to ensure that you don't. Thank you, Chairman.
Is there anybody else, any of them wish to speak? If not, shall I ask Councillor Spence to close, please? This is what he's about. Yes.
Apologies, Chairman, I forgot to answer Councillor Kinsella's question. Councillor Kinsella, yes, I'm struggling to remember the difference between the two reports. I haven't had quite the time to delve into that. I will get you a written response on that one. But it is a difficult situation with regard to that last mile. We know that as an organisation, when we get to that point around 2030-ish, that we are going to have a shortfall, and we are still working through plans in how we get that down to zero at the end of that period. So, and I'm assuming that's the issue that we're talking about in here. I will double check and I will get you a written answer.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis. Move to the vote then, please. Hang on. All right, Simon wants to speak. Councillor Spencer, please.
Yes, Chairman, and I did attempt in my preamble not to be political, so you'll forgive me now, Joan, but I'm going to have to be political. I'm not used to that, but I'll do my best, you know. I have to say, Chairman, I'm quite disappointed. I appreciate the understanding of the pressures placed upon everybody in seniorship roles in the council, and it has been challenging. There's no doubt about that. It's been a challenge for everybody, and that challenge is going to continue, whoever is responsible for this portfolio, and it's not going to go away because whoever is in government is not going to come over the hill with a white charger. There is no more cash, and I think there needs to be an acceptance of that. We've got a £5 trillion debt off the back of COVID. That's fundamentally where the problem lies, which is twice, in real terms, the World War II debt that we inherited after World War II. That took 80 years to pay off, so I'll leave you to work how long it'll take to pay double the debt off. Chairman, we as an authority, if we had the foresight to see what was going to happen in the future, years in advance, that COVID was going to come along, we were going to have a Ukrainian war, we were going to have all the issues that have been dealt with in recent years, we may well, undoubtedly, have made different decisions prior to that. But life isn't that simple. These things come along and you have to deal with them. And I will commit today to continue with the direction of travel because the efforts that are being put in to manage the circumstances we are facing is, quite frankly, astonishing in some areas. Let me just give you a small taster. I mean, Councillor Kinsella has mentioned our carbon footprint. Since COVID, working practices of this organisation have changed dramatically. Our staff, a vast number of our staff that are office-based, are choosing to work from home 2, perhaps 3 days a week. We do not need the assets that we have had in this authority anymore. We need to either repurpose, reuse or dispose of those assets. And I pay tribute to the asset management team who are doing a fantastic job in that particular area. Well exceeded the target for this year already. And it isn't about the short-term capital gain. It helps because it goes into clearing debt or it may be reinvested into bringing up to scratch the buildings and the properties and assets that we retain. But it's about the revenue costs and revenue expenditure on those buildings that we need to be very cognizant of. And that is an integral part of the plan of this authority to actually get on top of the financial implications that we face. It would always be nice to have more money. It would always be nice to splash the cash, as you might say. But we are not in that place, and we are not going to be in that place for some years to come. So we need to learn to live within our means. And as long as I'm doing this job, we will do our best to do so. We have a superb management team in the finance area of this organisation, and we intend to keep on top of this. The audit processes monitor that performance. The performance data, in actual fact, is quite a tribute given what has been done during that period as well. It highlights that not only can we face the financial challenges, but we can continue to perform at the highest level. So I pay tribute to all those measures, and without being too political, of course, I just hope that there is a recognition that this situation is not going to change, not in the short term. I do welcome multi-year settlements when I see them. I'd like to know what they are, right? And when we do know, hopefully, probably towards the end of this year, we may know what our financial position is going to be for the next 5 years, which will be fantastic. We've all been asking for that for a very long time, if that can be achieved. I'm yet to see it. I'm hopeful it will happen, but let us not hold our breath. As far as I'm concerned, Chairman, that will be a step in the right direction as far as financial planning and exigencies of service is concerned. But fundamentally, we need to carry on being vigilant in the way in which we deliver our services and work within our means. And I know there are some challenging decisions to be made, and I know there are some difficult decisions to be made. But we are going to go about it in such a way that we will be open, honest and transparent in those processes. And there has been, in the past, when there was Labour administrations, there has been closures of lots of services, which I have to say wasn't as transparent as it might have been. But I could recall when they were, who carried them through, and it was a cabinet member as well at the same time. But we're not going to go there. I'm not being political this afternoon. So, Chairman, I will close at that point. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we move to the vote then, please? Has everyone voted that wants to vote? Okay then, thank you very much. The recommendations are approved. There are, item 13 are elected members' questions, of which there are none. Item 14 is a notice of motion in the hands of Councillor Gruby, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm bringing this motion to Council today as one of the local Buxton councillors. I'm heavily involved in Buxton and all of its local groups and its residents, and I'm fully aware of the concern that is shown that we do maintain our museum in Buxton. I'm always actively engaged with the residents, and I've worked alongside Councillor Lewis, and we have discussed and considered options available to us. A recent well-attended march to the front of the museum, led by a local group, demonstrated the evident desire and passion to keep our town's museum open. It was also well attended, I'm pleased to say, by members of the Labour group. The museum is a vital part of our heritage and must be preserved for the local people of today and for future generations. It is also critical for visitors to Derbyshire who visit from all over the world that are able to share our rich cultural heritage and history. I'm trusting that all members of the Council will consider voting in favour of this motion outlined below. The Council supports all efforts towards a sustainable, long-term solution to keep Buxton's Museum open and available for the residents of Derbyshire, as well as the many visitors to the town from outside the county. Thank you.
Councillor Kemp, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I would like to second the proposal, and I echo everything that Councillor Gruby has said. And I would just like to point out as well that Buxton Museum is not a museum of Buxton or of things found in Buxton or in the immediately surrounding areas. It actually has important collections nationally and across Derbyshire. I mean, for example, the Buxton Museum actually contains a great deal of information and works by the Derbyshire artist Joseph Wright, and worked in conjunction with Derby Museum in maintaining viewing of his works. Just by my driveway there is a field which from which was found a few years ago a very uninteresting looking bowl, and yes, obviously others in this room know the area. The bowl is 4,000 years old, and it is evidence of particular types of culture back in a period when it was thought that there was no settled farming at all. for 4,000 years. So it's a scheduled ancient monument. The bowl is actually contained within the museum and is only allowed to be unlocked and removed from the cabinet with the presence of, I think, somebody from the British Museum. Is that important? Okay, so that is a Buxton find, I suppose, as it was found in that field. Perhaps I should dig my drive up and see if I might find a few more. It is nationally important. It isn't just important to Buxton. There are also Roman artefacts in the Buxton Museum which represent other parts of the Peak District, such as the Roman fort at Navio, which is Brough down in the Hope Valley, and the rather larger fort of Melandra in Glossop. So those are actually held there for safekeeping. It would be nice, really, if we could have the facilities to show many of these things off better. But it is an important museum. It punches far above its weight. You may think of it as being a small local museum. It is far more than that. I've gone on long enough, and probably some of you agree. Maybe all of you agree. So as I say, I do second the proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Councillor Dixon, please.
I'll make another dull speech. I would like to support Councillor Gruby's motion on this, and I would like to put on record my thanks to the now retired director of the museum, Ros Westwood, who was recognised with an MBE for her services. She was a strong and inspirational woman, and I know she has. This has had a great toll upon her. On this. As Councillor Gruby alluded to, I did attend the march to support Ros on the day. I thought I had my picture taken with Councillor Lewis, but it turned out to be a lady in a Councillor Lewis mask. So, yeah, very much support this, but would perhaps just like to strengthen and move the motion. And what we'd just like to add to what has been put, that in the meantime, all efforts should be made to keep the collection together and not dispose of any assets whilst a new solution is being explored.
At that point, I shall ask you, Councillor Gruby, whether or not that would be okay with you.
I struggle a bit with the whole of Councillor Dixon's words there. In as much as keeping the whole of the collection together, there is a possibility that we may display some of our local artefacts in local places in Buxton, such as the Civic Association, who have offered us a space where we can at least demonstrate some of the artefacts that we still have available. Other than that, we will clearly be making every effort to find a permanent home for all of the exhibits in the museum as you've requested. So it's just that, if possible, we'd like to possibly be able to display some of our artefacts in very safe places, obviously. Thank you.
Thank you for that insight, Linda.
Well, if I just would to keep the collection. Because I appreciate, you know, in the meantime, if we were to display it somewhere else, we couldn't do the whole thing. Yeah.
Does that make it acceptable, Councillor Gruby?
Not entirely, because one of our assets, of course, is the building, which we can't guarantee to keep together. It's falling down ahead of us. Thank you. Exclude the building. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I can.
Not wanted to go down. What did the Romans do for us? Are we all happy at that?
Yes.
So, let me get this procedurally correct. We no longer have to go to another motion because we're accepting those words actually in the motion at this moment in time. Unless, of course, Councillor Lewis decides that he doesn't want to.
As long as Linda and Tony, who
Yeah.
proposed a second. happy to amend their motion.
Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Chairman. If I can just shed a little bit of light just to make sure that we're being absolutely clear. I don't fundamentally have a disagreement with what's just been suggested. The problem is that we have a collection that has something like 40,000 items in there. Yes, lots of those items are relevant to Buxton, they're relevant to Derbyshire, and they're relevant to a wider region. But not every item in that collection is. And as we did with the school library collection, where we had quite a large number of objects that were there, some of which were repatriated to indigenous cultures in various other parts of the world where they had more relevance, or to other regional museums across the country where they had more relevance as well. But it does not stop us and enhancing the collection longer term in terms of thinking about the possibility of taking objects that are sitting in other regional museums that have more relevance for Buxton than they do there, and bringing those objects to us and adding to the collection in that way. So it is a bit of a two-way street. Collections nowadays in museums are changed, modernised, etc. And there is a national collection storage problem around collections as well that needs to be considered. Lots of museum collections contain chunks of pottery, rocks and things like that, which may or may not be important, and we may have to consider how those objects are rationalised in the future. And that is a big debate amongst archaeologists at the moment. And there is already a covenant in place on a significant chunk of those collections in Buxton Museum to remain in Buxton and wherever possible displayed in Buxton. We will always honour that as well. So I just wanted to make that clear as well. So with those multiple caveats, quite happy that we could accept that amendment to that. If I may, Chairman, whilst I'm on my feet, just say a few words about our commitment to Buxton Museum, which I think is crystal clear. We want to support the museum moving forward in the town, and we are looking for new premises. We have made clear, and we made clear very quickly as we could, once we've established that the building in its current format is never going to be that museum because it would cost too much to put it right. And we can do a better job, I think, working with communities. We met with We Are Buxton earlier this week. We are intending to meet them again in the autumn as well, and keep them regularly updated and in the loop, and then ensuring that we do the best by the collection, the museum, and ensuring that we are putting on an offer within the town as well. So I just want to make crystal clear our commitment. And I do hope that as part of this, not asking for an amendment to it, but that we write and get the commitment from the new MP for Hyde Peak to get that support nailed on as well, because that will help in the fullness of time when it comes to applying for things like grants to make sure that we get those displays back in Buxton, and make the most of the opportunities as well for the collections within Buxton. So I want to thank Councillor Groby for bringing this motion here today and getting, hopefully, that cross-council commitment to that museum, and we can just get on with the job of getting it delivered, and in the meantime having that interim programme of exhibitions around the town and wider area as well. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Lewis. Would you like to just speak what you think your motion change would be now? Just so that I can then ask for...
The council will strive to keep the collection and not dispose of any of the collection while a new solution is being explored. So it doesn't rule out in the future repatriating it. Yeah.
Okay, that's as it stands, folks. Thank you very much for that mediation, I suppose, of some sort. Are there any other observations or questions on the motion?
With those bits.
With those bits added, obviously. No, can we then move to the vote then, please? Okay, that's unanimous, thank you. Before we start moving about and everything, the next meeting, as you're aware, starts at 5 p.m. We have some things to do in here. There is a bit of time. If you could try and get back in your seats for 10 to 5, because I know that Millie has a very tight schedule this afternoon. We don't want to start in late and having incomers coming out late. So thank you. Go and enjoy the sun for an hour.